right there. All right, and with this hook, we can lay over the velocities. We lay over the velocities, and we see we got a nice little tight couplet right there. And the radar indicated tornado is just going to be probably a mile or so southeast of Calhoun Falls, and it's going to head up to the northeast. It is going to come very, very close to the city of Abbeville. Radar estimates around 10:07 p.m. So you got about 10, 15 minutes if you're in Abbeville. But the tornado is potentially going to head directly toward the city of Abbeville.
This is radar now out of Greenville, Spartanburg, as I go ahead and get my mic back up and running here for you as we continue coverage here on the Carolina Weather Group. We have a tornado warning in Abbeville County. It's not yet updated on this radar here. It's actually where that yellow severe thunderstorm warning is, just across from the Georgia to South Carolina line. But I know Jared Smith's also been watching the radar. And Jared, we were watching this over the last few minutes. What was it that really gave you that first indication that we had something going on here?
Well, you know, we were just kind of clicking around radars, and we saw a little something going on the Columbia radar. It's about 8,000 feet up. It's like, that's interesting. So we switch over to GSP, and we've been watching this guy just tighten up and tighten and tighten. Just in the last few minutes, we had that tornado warning come out. Pretty well vertically correlated circulation here. I'm going to take my screen full. Actually, let me do that here. Let me get the radar scope. I got 4 panels rolling here right now, and what this is doing. Here's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the. Oh wow, that's a little big on there.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop some graphics for you, my friend, so you can see see your screen a little bit better.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Okay.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So this is really tightening up. We just got an update there, and guys, I am nervous about this.
I am too. Yeah, you see the latest out of the GSP chat.
Yeah, so the National Weather Service is telling us right now that the tornado is possibly developing just to the northeast of Calhoun Falls. I've dropped all of our graphics on the screen. We're back to radar scope from Jared Smith. Jared, walk us through what we're looking at here on your panels.
Yeah, this is a 4-panel view. This is I'm going to start from the top left here. Reflectivity, rainfall. This is what you're used to watching on TV. On the top right here is the velocity product. This shows us which way the winds are blowing within the storm. And then we get a little more advanced. We go to the bottom right here, and this is the correlation coefficient. This essentially just tells us how alike are the targets on the radar. The less alike they are, the more likely that stuff is mixing in. It can be rain and hail, or it could be rain and debris. And so this is often used as a way to confirm tornadoes are occurring. And then differential reflectivity. This tells us, the difference if targets are more vertically or horizontally oriented. I like to use this as just a kind of a final confirmation that we've got possibly a debris signature going on. And right now, it's questionable. It looks like this might be a little bit of non-uniform beam filling here. The CC values are not terribly low, but if there is something developing here, it's going to be near Calhoun Falls. So here's your no, that's not your inbound. Oh my goodness, amateur. All right, so here's your outbounds. Here's your inbounds here, and this is really tightened up. I mean, this is continuing to tighten up over the last couple scans. I'm going to put this, and the Weather Service in Greenville is using something called Sales, and what Sales does is it gives us updates every few minutes. I think we got a beware here, guys. I think we got a little donut hole that's just developed around Calhoun Falls right here. If you see that little weak echo region there on reflectivity, let me move up a little bit. This would be a great time to have MRLE. Yeah, I think we've got a little bounded weak echo region starting to show up here. So that continues to increase our confidence that there may be a tornado developing here. Yeah,
that's some of the best stuff I've seen all day.
I'm hearing a little audio feedback. I'm not sure. I think that might just be Chris who's doing us the due diligence and making sure we're transmitting, and I appreciate that. Just want to let you know it's feeding back on through. I kind of also want to remind folks, take this opportunity here, because I know we have a lot of folks tuning in right now who are trying to figure out exactly what is going on. So we do have a tornado warning here for Abbeville, South Carolina. But if you're in the path of this storm, what should you be doing right now? And I want to show you what you should not be doing right now. This is a live cam from Abbeville Central. Let me go ahead and drop that Columbia locator because that is wrong. And I just a few moments ago saw some cars continuing to travel on through here. So you don't want to be out in the roadways. You want to be finding a sturdy structure. You want to be getting inside that sturdy structure. Hopefully it has a basement or some sort of lower level you have access to. And you want to try to work your way into the center of that structure. Put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. So that might be ideally maybe a bathroom where the extra piping might be of benefit for you. But what else you could be doing right now is just making sure that you've got some good shoes on, because after the storm comes rolling on through, if you encounter any debris, you're going to want to make sure you have some good soles on those shoes. And you can see some lightning off in the distance here from this camera that we'll be keeping a close eye on. We just added this to our arsenal of cameras here. But if you are just joining us here on the Carolina Weather Group, we are now watching a tornado warning for Abbeville County, South Carolina. We'll go ahead and pop the radar up here and show you exactly what it is that we are watching for, and actually begin to work in the next few minutes on timing this out for you here. But we want to show you exactly where that red polygon appears there just in the last few frames in this radar image here from the Greenville Spartanburg radar. Chris Jackson, you do a lot of storm chasing out of Columbia into this portion of South Carolina. Have you been in this community before? Are there any parts of the community geographically that stand out in your mind?
Calhoun Falls, no, I haven't, but I've been through Abbeville quite a number of times, and it's a pretty nice, small town USA with the main street, that kind of thing. There's a lot of people in and around the Abbeville area, especially between Abbeville up to the northwest toward Anderson, or to the north toward Anderson. There's a lot of small towns up there that do have a substantial amount of people. And as far as topography is concerned, a lot of rolling hills, forests and stuff like that, and mixed in with neighborhoods and especially out in the rural areas, farms and stuff of that nature.
Sure, and one of the things we're doing here at the Carolina Weather Group is we are monitoring the information from the National Hurricane Service, and we use a feature that the media and emergency management in your local communities have access to. It is called National Weather Service Chat. So we're watching the information flowing not only from those official bulletins that you'll see on TV, hear on radio, and get on your NOAA weather radios at home, but we're also able to see some of the dialogue, the internal dialogue that they'll be sharing with the media and with emergency managers. But right now, this is a tornado warning for Abbeville, South Carolina. It goes until 10:15, so another 20 minutes or so, because of a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado located 13 miles southwest of Abbeville, or near Calhoun Falls, moving northeast at 25 miles per hour. So, it is right now, probably somewhere near Calhoun Falls, just over the border from Georgia. And you can actually see in our polygon here that it initially began as a severe thunderstorm warning, and just in that very next frame was when that red polygon popped over, and the National Weather Service decided to make this a tornado warning. I might maybe ask Jared Smith, who I know has his radar scope available to us, if he's able to do any sort of storm track over the next few minutes to let folks know anywhere from Calhoun Falls further down the path of this storm what might be impacted over the course of the next few minutes. Is that something, Jared, you might be able to bring up on your screen for us?
I'm actually in the process of getting bringing out the big boys, GR2.
Oh, okay,
so
sure.
We'll have that. So we'll have that shortly. But I will say that Abbeville certainly should be working on tornado precautions, because again, right now, if you were going to extrapolate this out in a straight line, it would stay west of Abbeville. But tornadic storms can sometimes turn to the right. And so that's why you're going to often see these polygons drawn in a way that it's going to favor the right side of the track. So Abbeville, while you may not be in immediate danger here, you are in immediate danger because you're under a tornado warning. It's really as simple as that. And we look at this last. For some reason now my Windows wants to do updates. Last week it was Peter's. Now it's fine. All right, here we go. If somebody can bring up radar scope on there, I need to get back to the Hangout.
Yeah, Chris has it up for us. Go ahead, Chris.
Yes. Yeah, we've got Chris's radar scope up here, and it's apparently keyed over me, so that's interesting.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, there we go. You can see there's a really good there's a pretty good little weak echo region that's really coming together. I mean, I just got another scan in at 9:57. This thing is still very tight. So I'll have GR2 up in just a second. We can switch to that. So far, it doesn't look like there's any debris associated with this. I think if there's one silver lining here, it's that this may not be down, but it could be at any moment. And again, sometimes they can touch down in between scans. So, you know, when you get under that warning, it's time to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's go ahead and put this polygon up on the screen for you once again, so that as you're joining us here, you can see exactly who is impacted over the course of the next few minutes. And so you can see this polygon here, which right now encompasses just Abbeville County or portions thereof. And we're talking about a population of about 15,862 people, according to this calculation here from the National Weather Service. It does involve 8 schools. Hopefully no one at those schools at this hour, but we do have at least one hospital in terms of points of interest who are inside this polygon. So that hospital and other areas right now may be beginning to take some of these tornado precautions, because we're watching again for this tornado that has been indicated by radar. We don't have any confirmation on the ground that one is actually on the ground, but we're seeing the circulation in that storm based on radar velocity, and that's what prompted the National Weather Service to issue this tornado warning. We're also watching for the possibility of at least penny-sized hail associated with this really severe thunderstorm. So we'll continue to watch that, and I want to go ahead and put back up on the screen. You know, Abbeville itself is kind of on the eastern edge of the actual polygon, but we're still seeing some activity in downtown. I think hopefully it's decreasing here, not only as the hours progress, but hopefully people start to get word of this tornado warning, whether it be on radio or straight to their cell phones. And so hopefully this will clear out and we can get people to those tornado-safe areas. Rather be safe than sorry, because we do have this tornado warning in effect for the next 15 minutes or so. I think there were some updates coming in on National Weather Service chat. Was anybody able to get their eyeballs on the latest?
Yeah, James. It just continued the tornado warning until 10:15 for Abbeville, and looking at the latest scan on radar scope, it's gotten even tighter.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. Let's diagnose this a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put your screen back up for our viewers at home so they can see what it is you're talking about. And I know that Radar Scope has that ability where you can kind of draw and circle things and point things out Absolutely. To us. Which portion of the storm here is our most concerning to us with regards to the tornado threat? Right.
So what we're looking at reflectivity here, basically rainfall. And what we're looking at is the overall storm structure. And what we're going to look at for the tornado is going to be right down in here. And flipping over to velocities, if we look at the velocity scan, right where I just circled that, you see that nice tight little couplet. And that's going to be gate-to-gate shear showing a rotation on the radar. And this, this would be the tornado in progress, if it was all the way to the ground. But there's definitely really strong rotation. Right now, I can actually measure this from downtown Abbeville. It's about 8 miles off to the southwest, and still heading off to the northeast. It's going to come really, really, really close to downtown Abbeville and split between Abbeville and due west, probably over the next 20 minutes or so.
And we will continue to continue with our streams here, because we know folks not only are probably watching us from their computers, but maybe their mobile devices in this area or from adjacent areas for of interest of loved ones and friends who are in this area. So right now, this is the only severe storm we have actually in the Carolinas. As you know from watching our thread, watching our show tonight, we've had this continued flash flood threat across the Carolinas. So not only are we going to continue to watch that threat for the remainder of tonight, but a lot of these flash flood watches that we have up for western North Carolina, upstate South Carolina, they continue into tomorrow, not only for the rain that we're seeing on the radar near this tornado warning, but we still have more rain across Winston-Salem, Greensboro, up towards that Danville area, and where you currently have up on the screen those outlined in green there. Those are flash flood warnings where we are continuing to get reports tonight of flooding occurring along the North Carolina-Virginia line. Just want to quickly mention that here as we continue to watch this situation most threatening, most urgently right now along the Georgia-South Carolina border, where we have a tornado warning for Abbeville County until 10:15. The other thing that we'll watch kind of as our number 2 priority in this neck of the woods is a severe thunderstorm warning, not yet up on your screen, but it was last seen there over Athens and moving closer to Toccoa, including parts of Hartwell and Franklin County there in Georgia. So that's been updated and expanded, continued to move move to the northeast. So another update on that one, if it were to come, would march it right over Interstate 85 into South Carolina. So that's kind of our number 2 priority in the area for damaging wind and hail possibility, with our number 1 priority remaining this tornado warning for Abbeville County until 10:15. Right now, the direct threat of this tornado somewhere near Calhoun Falls. I think we have Ricky Matthews on
Yes,
with
we
us. Ricky, good evening to you. And what are you watching in regards to these storms?
Hey, good evening, James. Hopefully our microphone and everything's coming across here perfectly. Just kind of an interesting environment. I pulled up the SPC mesoscale parameters, and the interesting thing is there's not a whole lot of ingredients that we would typically look for major tornadoes. But the interesting thing is a lot of these are very low, what we call low top supercells, and so they're able to spin up, especially here in the Carolinas, a little easier than some other places like in the plains. The environment there would be a little different than we typically see here. What you're looking at on this screen, this is what's known as Supercell Composite Parameter, or SCP. Notice how the highest amounts of those are actually across eastern Carolina, eastern Virginia, and eastern South Carolina here. And as we go towards that Abbeville cell, lower values there for SCP or Supercell Composite. We'll switch over to a significant tornado parameter. One of the reasons there's not a whole lot of storms in that area that is of the highest potential right now, this blue area here across eastern Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina, is that the atmosphere is capped. It's like if you take a soda bottle, you shake it up, and you still got the lid on it, right? Nothing really happens. Well, you unscrew that lid, and the atmosphere becomes uncapped. And that's what we have across the western Carolinas right now, where these storms are moving into. So where that Abbeville cell is moving north, while wind shear is pretty weak, surface to 1 kilometer shear is only about 15, 20 or so, more like 15 in that area. Still enough to get the atmosphere spinning a little bit. And certainly on radar, a very interesting and very serious looking thunderstorm still, with that couplet just to the north and east of Calhoun Falls, about 8 miles to the west of the town of Abbeville, moving off to the north. So this cell, guys, as you guys were probably talking about earlier, is one that's had a history of producing some storms across Georgia. I was watching some coverage from a WSB TV in Atlanta a little bit ago, and they've been watching this storm move across the Georgia area for about the past hour or two. This one little thunderstorm able to maintain itself, a supercell thunderstorm, as it's moved off towards the north and east into South Carolina. So seems like we've got 1 or 2 maybe cells that are kind of, and when I say cells, I mean thunderstorms that are maintaining themselves, getting their acts together, and then watching that one to the west now in parts of northeast Georgia that right now has a severe thunderstorm warning on it, but we'll kind of have to watch to see if those little individual cells get going. Jared, you're noting something, just the rotational value of this storm seems to have increased a little bit.
I am unmuted. Great. Okay, very good. Very good. Very good. All right. So using a GR analyst, one of the tools, one of the algorithms that's available to us here is something called normalized rotation. Long story short, it can show us how intense the rotation is within a storm. It was at 1.32 earlier, down to 1.25. Anything over 1 is pretty significant. And so we see this circulation still kind of moving. Let me see if I'm going to get the storm motion from the warning here real quick. I'll put a little line track on it. Again, this is an extrapolation of if it was to go in a straight line, which it may not do. So Abbeville continue to be safe, but this, if this holds up, we could, we could potentially see issues in due west, up in Donald, crossing 178 later on. So, but it's still pretty tight rotation. I mean, this is still a really, really tight rotation here. We have the bounded weak echo region right here. So that's where you have very strong returns on the radar, and then a very weak return. We call it a donut hole. It looks like, because it looks like a donut hole. It's a little void within the circulation, and so we've got that. We've got still some very good velocity returns. The one thing that that was well, it's not, doesn't, I don't know. No, I don't think we have a debris. I don't think we have debris yet. So that's one piece of good news. So that's one there. So there's a second one that maybe hot on its heels, trying to get started as it crosses the Savannah River here, as it gets towards Mount Carmel, and maybe a second round possibly near Calhoun Falls. So that'll be something to watch. But certainly right now, the big concern is with the severe thunderstorm, again, capable of producing a tornado, radar indicated. You know, that's just you don't want to mess with that, because it can drop. It can drop and come up, especially with these low top guys. You know, we had a situation about a week ago in Savannah, Georgia, where a couple boundaries came together, dropped a tornado 6 to 8 minutes, did EF1 level damage, and lifted before they could get a warning out. So again, you got to take this seriously. You know, they were able to, you know, fortunately, they were able to get a good eye on this and get a warning out. And we just got a new scan in. Let me remove the storm track here. That Beware, bound to weak echo region is still present. Still have a pretty decent rotation here. The NROT, the normalized rotation, is dropped below 1. So maybe this might be cycling down a little bit, but still, warning continues. And let me see what's going on in chat.
Yeah, the National Weather Service is actually saying exactly what you just said, Jared, which is that they're seeing still good rotation there with that cell in Abbeville County, but it's a bit broader. It's not as strong as it was a few minutes ago. So they're going to see what it does over the course of the next 5 minutes or so and decide whether or not they're going to continue the tornado warning past 10:15 or so, because 5 minutes from now is when this is scheduled to end. So the National Weather Service in Greenville, Spartanburg, who has jurisdiction over the storm, will be deciding whether or not to continue this cell, and if they do, they'll redraw that polygon, kind of probably begin to trim out Calhoun Falls, which is now kind of on the back end of this particular cell, and adjust that polygon. The other thing we'll be watching, as Jared made mention to, is that there is a second cell back behind it, not currently warned, but we're just watching it as all of a sudden we're getting a lot of activity beginning to fire up. We're also getting a lot of questions on Facebook regarding what this means for the remainder of tonight, and so I want to kind of just quickly give everyone a regional rundown of what we can expect through the rest of the evening, because I know we got a lot of folks getting ready to go to bed and they want to know what the situation is. First and foremost, no reason to not have your NOAA weather radio on, so keep that on as you head to bed tonight, because you never know whether it's a severe thunderstorm, a tornado warning, or even a flash flood risk. Having that weather radio by your bedside is always good. What we have right now up on our regional view is kind of the overlay from the Storm Prediction Center. In that dark green, that is the marginal risk for severe weather tonight. In that lighter green, just kind of general run-of-the-mill thunderstorm. So this goes back to what Ricky Matthews was talking about a few minutes ago, in that tornadoes is not the key threat today, because we don't have a huge predicted outbreak of severe weather, but it's not impossible, just like we're seeing right now. So what does this look like on simulated radar? If we were to ask our weather model to kind of play this out for you over the course of the next few hours, this is the HRR, the High Resolution Weather Model. It's one of the many we looked at, but this one in particular kind of paints a nice picture for us over the course of the next few hours. So what we have right now is essentially the situation across the southeast at this hour, and if I begin to move these images piece by piece over the course of the next few hours, you can see not only where these cells head, but they're going to be over a lot of the areas that already saw a lot of rain today. So this is upstate South Carolina. This is part of the Columbia metro area. This is the Charlotte metro area, up 77, up towards Winston-Salem and Greensboro, and up into Virginia. And that's why we still have that flash flood watch in effect through the overnight hours, because while we will watch and can't rule out the chance for an isolated tornado or severe thunderstorm warning, our number one threat for the next 24 hours or so in these communities is flooding. So please, if you're heading off to bed in the next few minutes, take that NOAA weather radio with you, and it will wake you up in the middle of the night for any life-threatening weather situations that are playing out in your neck of the woods.
James, I would say the flooding threat is probably actually higher tomorrow than it is today across the area, just with the combination of how much rain we've seen in many spots today across Western Carolina. And then what you're showing there, the simulated model runs for the overnight and tomorrow morning, all that heavy rain just kind of moving over the same spots, what we call training over and over and over again. And, you know, even though a lot of these storms aren't showing up as heavy rain, in some spots, there's a lot of moisture in the air, and that moisture makes it down on the ground one way or the other, whether it's in the form of just a light rain, moderate rain, or a thunderstorm. And those rainfall totals can add up pretty quickly. And so we'll see tomorrow kind of what happens with all these storms moving over the same spots, but it wouldn't shock me to have some flooding issues across Western Carolina. That's why, of course, that flash flood watch in effect through and into tomorrow. Guys, that storm looks a little broader to me now. Kind of looks like our rotation is getting more spread apart, not as tight of a couplet as we had before, which leads me to believe perhaps the tornado risk has gone down just a little bit here. If you switch to correlation coefficient, I think you're seeing a lot of radar contamination here. A lot of times you look for that little spot of debris or a green or a blue spot. And while I'm seeing that kind of co-located, well, not so much co-located there, I don't think it's really any indication of debris. And that tornado warning has now been allowed to expire. So that's the good news. Although Calhoun Falls County Fire Department reporting a tornado touchdown on Watts Road between Abbeville and Calhoun Falls on the Calhoun Falls Highway. So let's go back a little bit, James, if we can. Maybe step the radar back. Let's see if I can bring it up on mine or on yours.
I think Jared is running our radar scope here, or is it GR? It might be GR. We'll ask him.
I've got GR. I have GR with a radar scope table. So there you go. So what time do you want to see?
Well, let's see. Let's step it back to when it was passing over Calhoun Falls. I can share my GR too. I realized I was sharing the wrong screen there. So we can take either or. I've got mine kind of set up here.
We'll let you walk us through it, Ricky, as you narrate it.
So, they were talking about that potential tornado near Calhoun Falls Highway, and I'm not an expert on the area down there, but I'm assuming it's pretty close to Calhoun Falls. So here's what the radar looked like during that time frame. Notice how close together the two areas were with that tight coupled there, just the south and east of Calhoun Falls. Let me step it forward here. We can actually loop this, and we'll watch the storm move off to the north. You can see it became pretty tight, and then it weakened a little bit as it moved up to the north and east. We'll switch to correlation coefficient and step it back here, and we'll step through frame by frame. Let's see if that was anything. ZDR is pretty high still, so usually you want a lower amount of ZDR, what we call differential reflectivity. Basically, that's a measure of the shape of the objects in the air. Of course, raindrops usually are all one shape as they fall, but if you were to loft a tree limb, pieces of leaves, stuff like that, they would look different than raindrops do. So ZDR allows us to figure out the difference in those types of precipitation stuff here. So as that storm moved off to the north and east there, it certainly became a little weaker, but guys, it was pretty good looking as it moved over that Calhoun Falls area. Wouldn't shock me if there was actually a tornado touchdown. Of course, the Weather Service will go out and investigate it probably tomorrow if there was one or not. But regardless, with this storm anyway, the threat for strong gusty winds does continue. Even though there may not be a tornado, I think the risk is still there for some 60-mile-per-hour winds. And then, of course, watching this area of storminess now getting ready to push into southwestern South Carolina near Anderson and near the Westminster area, moving up to the north and east.
Chris Jackson, who chases in this area, is watching from Columbia, South Carolina with us. Chris, what is that cell back behind it doing? Anything of concern that you're watching?
Just been sitting here watching over the last 10 minutes while Ricky's been giving a great explanation of the cell ahead of it. And, it's a lot like the cell ahead of it right now. It definitely has a little couplet of rotation, but it's pretty broad right now. And it looks like it's, let's see here, probably about 5 miles southwest of Mount Carmel. And it's going to head up, just to the east of where the last, possible tornado just went. It's not warned right now, but it's definitely something to, keep our eye on. Just like we were sitting here before we went on the air, we were talking about the storm, and we just kind of watched this as it evolved.
Yeah, so maybe we'll hang out for another moment. We'll get another radar scan or two to come on through and decide whether we're going to continue our coverage here. What I will also do is just kind of pop up the regional radar for you, because you can see now the tornado warning is still on the screen, but let me go ahead and at least kill my graphic, because we do know that that tornado warning for Abbeville County has been canceled, and it will drop off the actual image in a moment. But what I want to point out in the yellow boxes are the severe thunderstorm warnings that are still in the area. So that still includes Abbeville County, and we also have one over like the Hart, Georgia area that we'll watch to probably March into South Carolina here in the next little bit. Whether it's severe or just a strong thunderstorm, we'll have to wait and see. But we do have quite a little bit of activity here riding this precipitation train, if you guys will, coming out of Georgia into South Carolina. I know a lot of you are watching on Facebook Live, on Twitter, on YouTube. Thank you so much. Whether this is the first time you've watched with us or you're a frequent viewer, we do appreciate you logging on, watching us, and trusting us to relay this information for you. Please do like and subscribe. Not only is it, of course, good for us, but then you'll be alerted when we go into severe weather like this, because we have our weekly Wednesday show at 8:15 p.m. Eastern Time, but we do, as you can clearly see, break in for special weather coverage when needed. And so to know when that's happening, liking, following, and subscribing to us is a good way to be kept up to date. During our earlier broadcast tonight, we were also watching a tornado warning that the Peachtree City office of the National Weather Service was covering over the Athens-Clarke County area of Georgia. And we wanted to reiterate that the emergency manager there in that county has since let everyone know that no damage was reported in Athens-Clarke County, so that's good news. We'll still wait to see exactly what comes out of the Calhoun Falls area of South Carolina, because it sounds like we're getting some initial reports of damage there, unfortunately. And we'll wait to see, not only during the coming hours during the overnight, but when that sun comes up and more people are out and about, exactly what the extent of that damage is. And Ricky mentioned as well, too, the National Weather Service may decide to send a team down to do a storm survey to do some analysis on that damage to find out, was it a tornado, and if so, how strong of a tornado was impacted there.
James, something we should point out, though, is that these thunderstorms, especially supercell thunderstorms, have a tendency to cycle a little bit. So just because the warning has expired doesn't mean you should kind of just forget about any of the thunderstorms out there. Sometimes these little buggers can die off and pulse back up a little bit. So we'll see if that happens with the Abbeville cell or with any of these other thunderstorms that are out here now. It looks like, Chris, you're watching that southern cell. Kind of looks like it's separating itself from the northern cell. When we're storm chasing, kind of watching thunderstorms, you always worry about one cell cutting off the inflow to the other one. It looks like they're getting a decent little separation to where both of them may be able to sustain themselves.
Yeah, that's something I was actually about to type in our chat here, because I thought for a few minutes there the southerly storm was going to overtake the storm to the north of it, but it looks like they're starting to separate themselves right now. Flip back over to our radar scope here, because I just like the way it's laid out. It looks like the northern storm is going to continue off up to the northeast, due west over, then up closer to Ware Shoals, Honea Path, and then eventually, an hour or two from now, up to I-385 corridor, Gray Court, Fountain Inn, into the south side of the Greenville area. And just watching that storm, right behind it, it's still showing a little bit of broad rotation, but it's not near as strong as it was just a few minutes ago. I'm sure you guys would probably agree on that. And the same with the storm that was tornado warned. It looks like the rotation continues to get a little bit more broad and not so much confined and concise to one area that you look for a tornado warning.
Yeah, GSP has opted. Yeah, they opted for a special weather statement for that one too. So they're saying 50-mile-an-hour winds. So they right now have not extended the warning past the severe thunderstorm warning past Abbeville. So throw that out there for now.
One thing too, guys, I don't know if any of you guys have, there's a few lightning strikes I see on here, but look how little lightning there is. These aren't typical thunderstorms where we get a ton of lightning and it announces its arrival before it gets there. These things aren't producing a whole lot. So unlike afternoon storms, you may not have any advanced notice per se of a storm rolling into your neck of the woods before it starts pouring down rain and the wind starts blowing.
That's right.
Yeah, I've even pulled up the GLM, and really, there's very little. Even the satellite is not seeing much. So if we take my radar full, we will. I've got the GLM strikes, quote unquote strikes, not really strikes, but when the GLM is this quiet, and that's really something, isn't it? It's like, there's not a lot of thunder with these thunderstorms. So to Ricky's point, it's definitely something that you're going to hear it when it's on top of you, and probably not before.
The other thing, too, we talked about some of those storms down in Georgia. While that Athens County one did not seem to produce any damage, there was damage reported in Walton County. Officials confirming 5 homes severely damaged in the Social Circle area of Walton County. Cell tower also down there, so 911 having some issues. So the deputies are moving around street to street instead of relying on calls to 911. So some damage down in Walton County, Georgia, after what was likely a tornado moved through there a little bit earlier. Guys, that severe thunderstorm warning has actually been allowed to expire now for this Abbeville cell. So that's good news overall. You're still getting some gusty winds, some heavy rainfall, and maybe even a couple lightning strikes, a little bit of rumbles of thunder. But at least it seems like for the immediate term, the Weather Service folks thinking that the threat for strong, damaging winds of at least 60 miles per hour, 58, 60 miles per hour, has been dropping with these storms. But still, with the saturated ground across the area, it wouldn't take much to down trees. And it seems like trees always fall down, whether it's a breeze or whether it's a 60 mile per hour wind in South Carolina, North Carolina sometimes. So keep that in mind, too, that the storm doesn't technically have to have a warning, have to have some type of alert. These storms, when the ground is so saturated, can knock down some trees very easily, even like 20, 30 mile per hour winds.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw a little bit of that up north of Charlotte earlier today in, I think, Cabarrus County, Iredell County, where we had some of that rain that was training through, Ricky, and it did bring down some trees. And to your point from earlier in our coverage, that's going to be the big threat as we look ahead to tomorrow with more of this rain coming on through, because now we're heading into the second week of pretty persistent on and off rain, the second or third day of almost daily rainfall, and so the ground is very wet outside, and we're going to have to watch that very carefully. I was trying to bring up, as I was talking, a Department of Transportation camera from Georgia, which is near the state line, to see if we could see anything there, because I think this is fairly near where we have a severe thunderstorm warning rolling on through. Having a hard time really getting a stable connection out of this camera, but this is right there on Interstate 85, Lake Hartwell. This is the Georgia side, I think, looking towards the South Carolina side. And you can see traffic is still flowing here, but not terribly too far from where we had that severe thunderstorm warning kind of rolling on through. The second of the two kind of areas we were watching there carefully, but I think for the moment everything is looking a-okay.
Hey, James, let's extrapolate this a little bit here. Take kind of a wide view of western South Carolina. Talk about the communities, that will probably see some of these thunderstorms here, or at least heavy areas of rain as we go over the next couple of hours. Obviously, Seneca, Salem, Pickens, you guys are going to be in line for some of that heavy rainfall, and then potentially some gusty winds with that storm moving out of Georgia. The storm that we were tracking through Abbeville will be continuing to move up to the north, so that could impact parts of the Greenville, South Carolina area, very close to Greenville, Spartanburg here, and Greer, as we go probably over the next hour or 2 hours, eventually pushing up maybe into western North Carolina if it manages to hold itself together. It's going to be kind of a wait-and-see situation for western Carolina, but that would be moving up towards Columbus, Lake Lure, maybe Hendersonville. These storms are kind of moving north-northeast, more of a north-north-north-northeast. They're very slowly jogging themselves off towards the east here, but majority of them are moving almost due north and east. Really, when they get themselves rotating a little bit, it's almost easier to see what storms may pose a threat, because watch that storm that was down there in Abbeville. What it did is it kind of started jogging more towards the east. So interesting storm motion there as the storm gets a little bit of rotation in, it starts to turn a little bit and shows up a little differently there on radar. So I would say Greenville, Spartanburg, areas towards the Belton community, areas towards Woodruff, near GSP, all those areas are probably going to be the areas that we're most keeping our eyes on for the next little bit. More little showers and storms, though, starting to break out, guys, now basically along and west of I-77 here in parts of South Carolina. That's going to be moving up towards Shelby, Gastonia. Right now, really nothing too strong or severe with those, but certainly some areas of heavy rainfall and that are basically moving over the same areas. So York County, areas of Chester County, Lancaster County. Eventually, you guys are going to be seeing some of those heavy downpours, very isolated in their nature. Not everybody in the county will see them, but some people will get those heavy rain bands as they push off towards the north.
And I think that was actually one of the contributing factors during our main broadcast tonight. I got knocked off the air here in Charlotte because we had a power flash, and it's my understanding that a lot of our wires here are underground, and we don't drain very well in this neighborhood. So I think that ground is getting saturated, and while I'm not an electrical technician, I think that probably contributed to why we had a bit of a power flash, not only tonight, but also in the past, because we're just getting this really oversaturated ground, which is beginning to interfere with stuff.
Interesting.
That's my theory, at least.
Well, guys, we're coming up on 10:30, so what do we...
I think we may wrap up this live coverage here following the expiration of that tornado warning in Abbeville County. I want to go ahead and just like you were talking about, Ricky, kind of pop up the wider view of that GSP radar, where we do have some of those isolated, strong to severe thunderstorms still moving across the area. No tornado warnings at this point. And remind everyone as you go through the night tonight that we can't rule out the chance for an isolated severe storm. Keep that NOAA weather radio handy. But also tomorrow's big threat of more continued rain. Here is that weather model, the HRR, playing from tonight through tomorrow. If it looks like today's radar, you are not mistaken, because a lot of the communities who got rain today will be getting rain tomorrow as well too, which is why the National Weather Service is keeping that flash flood watch in effect, because if you saw instances today where flooding water was causing ponding of water or poor drainage areas or knocking down some trees, we're going to see even more of that tomorrow, because the ground is going to continue to get saturated here as this system continues to kind of pummel us with rain in the same areas over and over again. Anyone else have any closing thoughts before we wrap up this live coverage? Okay.
I'm pretty good on my end. I just looked through social media to see if I could see any, reports, or if I'd had any reports to my various pages, and I haven't got much of anything.
I appreciate that, Chris. I was looking at the same thing on Twitter, because we did have that initial report of some damage there in that Calhoun Falls area there on the Calhoun Falls Highway. We're looking to see now if we'll get more reports. So Chris and all of us will continue to keep an eye on that. We'll continue to see what the National Weather Service has to say. Do be safe out there, and thanks so much for watching this live special coverage from the Carolina Weather Group. Be sure to, again, follow us and subscribe to us on Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope, so that you can be alerted when live coverage just like this is initiated for severe weather coverage in the Carolinas.